You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
Republicans continue to introduce bills aimed at disenfranchising black voters after they showed up in record numbers to elect 2 Democratic senators in January's runoffs. Now, today, the Georgia State Senate passed legislation that would require voters to submit a driver's license number, state identification card number, or a photocopy of an approved form of identification in order to vote absentee in the state. This comes after Georgia House Republicans presented a 48-page bill calling for several changes that would limit the time frame for early voting in the state. Joining me now to discuss this further is Senator Michael Doc Rhett of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. Thank you so much for joining me today, Senator. Now, let's see here. Are these bills that are being introduced here in Georgia, is this simply because Republicans lost the presidential election and the Senate race in Georgia? Is this some way retaliation?
Well, I'd like to thank you for having me on the phone. Right now, I'm in between a committee meeting, and we may have an important vote. So if I have to go, please excuse me. But to answer your question, basically, things didn't work out for them, and now they're trying to change things to try and make it better for them. Just like, for instance, the absentee vote. They used that for many years, and it worked well for them. But last year, when we used it and it was successful for us, now they want to add added requirements in order for you to absentee vote. So, yes, you have a point there.
Can we talk to, Senator, how much of a threat that these bills pose to minorities in Georgia? Because some people, I don't think, get the bigger picture here. But can you just talk to how much of a threat it is for voters in the future?
Well, it creates an extra hoop that they have to jump through, and particularly for elderly people who might have to try and find a way to get a copy of their ID or get a photo ID. So it creates an extra hoop in some cases that makes it a little more challenging for them to get out and vote.
So let's say that all of these bills that have been presented are passed. Are there, I guess, plan Bs in place for, the black community to be well equipped to be able to get out and vote in the next election?
Oh, yes. We got plans, and we work with Fair Fight and other organizations. So we're ready to go. And I have to go and take a vote. I'm sorry.
That's all right, Senator. You're busy. We thank you so much for coming on today. Greatly appreciate it. All right, I want to throw it back to my panel now. So, guys, I want to talk to Scott first. Scott, what are your thoughts on all these bills that are being presented in Georgia to suppress minority votes, essentially?
Well, they present them under what they call race-neutral terms, but they're not race-neutral because they have a disparate impact and are narrowly tailored to discriminate and force black people to vote in lesser numbers. We know that early voting, either by mail or drop box or absenteeism, made up 30 to 35, maybe more % of the vote and made the difference. Those ballots were counted last. They weren't counted like the day of voting. We know that the Republicans had 3 different votes, and those 3 different audits of those results of the presidential election all came back fair and no fraud. And so these concerns by Republican legislatures are concerns not only raised by the president, but raised by them because they lost. They've told their constituents that, and now their constituents, now that they've created that doubt in their mind, are allegedly have these Republican legislators reacting to what they told their constituents, which was part of the big Trump lie, if you will. And so as a result, we need to be vigilant. They haven't passed both houses yet. It hasn't been signed by the governor, but as soon as it's signed by the governor, our civil rights organizations, our legal groups have got to begin challenging these laws if they become law, challenging this legislation now. The courts in North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, Wisconsin, and even Georgia have been leery and weary of these types of bills and legislation that have become law and have denounced them and reversed them and struck them down. But we've got to keep the pressure on, not only on the lobbying front, but on the litigation front, if it ever gets signed, if these laws ever get signed by the governors of these states.
Monique?
This is why we can't, as the Bible says, afford to be, at ease in Zion, because Georgia gets this really great, impressive victory. They literally snatched this country from the depths of despair. But the devil is always busy, and so are these GOP legislators, frankly. So what has to happen is the same energy that it took, not just from the states like Georgia, from the individual cities and regions in Georgia, but nationally, all the energy that it took in order for us to get 2 senators that gave us the advantage that we need in the U.S. Senate. We have to put that same backing behind what is happening now. And people, voting matters. We got to show up every time, vote from the top of the ticket all the way down to the bottom, because these things that are happening now aren't happening because of this past federal election and people who just went into office. These are state and local legislators doing what they do best. And that is a system of oppression that has been around since slavery ended. So we have to do our part nationally. We can support organizations like Black Voters Matter that are bringing the lawsuits when there are issues like this that suppress and oppress the vote. We can do our part to turn out the vote and to get elected officials out of office who desire to have their own system of control in place and don't want to acknowledge the will of the people. So those are action steps that I think we can start on right now.
Robert?
Look, I got to apologize for Georgia and my people down here. Every time you hear about us, there's something crazy going on, whether it's Vernon Jones crowd surfing or Marjorie Taylor Greene and her QAnon conspiracy. We always got something going on down here, and I'm not quite sure why. Florida used to be the crazy state, but Georgia, just kind of filtered its way up. Also, shout out to some of my pastors down in Lakeland, Florida, Eddie and Paula Lake and Richard, Reverend Boss down there, because we might be coming to visit because there's too much crazy going on here. But let's understand one thing. The Republicans are not going to stop. And the reason goes far deeper than Trump or Trumpism or the 2020 election. It's the question of demographics. And that's what they are afraid of. They have been working for 20 years to outrun demographics. People who are not from Georgia do not know we used to be a blue state. And we had Democratic governors like Zell Miller and Roy Barnes. 2006, Thurber Baker and Michael Thurman won statewide. Thurber Baker got 60% of the vote nearly in 2006 when he ran for re-election. What happened? 2010, Republicans won a majority in the House and the Senate, and they controlled reapportionment. And then they gerrymandered their way into a constitutional majority in the House and the Senate and all constitutional officers. We haven't had, until Warnock and Ossoff, we had not had a Democrat elected statewide since 2006 in the state. 14 years between those elections, and that's because gerrymandering. We are a state that is 35% African American, 15% Latino, 6% Asian, 52% women, with one of the largest LGBTQIA PK plus populations in the country, in addition to the number of transplants from around the country that come to Atlanta for the music industry and the film industry. We are a blue state masquerading as a purple state. And Republicans and Tea Partiers and MAGAs and Trumpites understand that the only way to win the fight is to change the rules. Reverend Jackson says often that when the score is public, the rules are fair, that we win. But it's only when they have a slanted playing field that are able to take over. And Georgia is a microcosm of what goes on nationally. Remember, Republicans have won the popular vote in presidential elections one time in the last 30 years. George W. Bush in 2004 won the popular vote. Before that, it was his Daddy Bush in 1988 was the last time Republicans won the popular vote. Right now, Republican senators represent about 41 million fewer people than Democratic senators do right now. And in fact, 15 Republican senators represent about 38 million people, which is less than the 2 Democratic senators that represent the state of California. So they are not trying to win on appealing to the masses in this country. They're not trying to win on being the party of the future, the party of ideas, the party of moving people forward. They are trying to win on white resentment. They're trying to win on white fear. And the best way to do this is to suppress and reduce the number of people who are able to vote. Now, on the bright side with this legislation, my friend James Woodall, president of the state NAACP, testified on it earlier today, is more than likely unconstitutional and will be struck down. However, this is part of a suite of legislation introduced here in this state, including trying to make the Secretary of State no longer an elected position, but rather appointed by the legislature, attempts to change any changes in the rules for elections, taking that power away from the state and local election boards, investing that in the state legislature, anything that can be done to reduce the power and the strength of the black vote in this state is what is being done. So this is why that federal oversight is so necessary, because all of this has happened since the Shelby v. Holder decision in 2014. Now that we don't have pre-clearance with the Justice Department, none of this would even be legal prior to that Shelby decision. So it's important for us to fight for this on the federal level. I don't give a damn what they have to do in the Senate. I don't care if you have to bribe, beg, and steal to get that John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed. It has to get passed. It is imperative for the future of the democracy, because we had a nice inauguration. It was wonderful. It was fun. We beat the bushes and walked all over the 159 counties to win those 2 Senate races. That whole time, Republicans were plotting and scheming on how to return to power. And because of that, we cannot rest. And you can't be tired yet. It's time to continue to fight and push it through to the end. We're already on the right side of history. We're already on the right side of the issues. We're already on the right side of the poll numbers. What we have to do is now get on the right side of the law to ensure that it cannot rig the game against us.
All right. Any final comments from Monique or Scott before we move forward?
I had one. I just wanted to echo. I thank you, Robert, for bringing up just the history of Georgia, because sometimes I think people don't know their state's history. My home state, Texas, has a similar history in that we were blue, 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 blue. We are a blue state that has had a really bad 25 years. But before that, you look at the history of governors, you look at the Senate, we're the home state of Barbara Jordan. We're the home state of Lyndon B. Johnson. We're the home state of Ann Richards. And people who are either young or ignorant or both don't know the true character of their own state or territory or region. And so we end up thinking we are powerless when we are not, when we right now actually are going against type. We're going against culture. We're going against our own kind of mores and have to return to them. And I think sometimes when you do, as Robert just did, remind us of who we are, then we feel more empowered to come back to our center and stand up for ourselves.
Scott.
Georgia, nothing much to add other than let's not forget about Senator Nunn, a great defense hawk and Democrat from the state of Georgia, Democratic senator as well.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.